Welcome to Vitality. My name is Jess Pinkerton, and I'm so excited that you are here tonight to hear about our nutrition challenge. Every January, we do some type of challenge to help us kind of reboot after the holiday season, to detox and to get started on good, healthy habits that will last throughout the year. So our InBody scan, if you haven't been on the InBody scale yet, it is really a great tool. It uses bioelectric impedance analysis to give us information about your weight, your body fat mass, your skeletal muscle mass, your body water, and it gives you a printout so you can take home with you and you can see all of these things. It even breaks down, where your muscle is located on your body so you can compare limb to limb and see any imbalances that you may have going on. At the bottom of the sheet, it graphs out how things have changed over time. So you'll have some data points from the beginning of the challenge to compare to those data points at the end of the challenge. So again, that is what we're gonna do Monday and Tuesday of next week. Those are our weigh-in days. You'll come in, it'll take about 5 minutes, and then you'll have this printout to take home with you. So, the rules for the challenge, I'm going to go through them quickly now. We'll go through them more in detail throughout the presentation. So the first 3 things we want you to eliminate are added sugars. We're not talking about sugar that's occurring naturally in things like fruits and dairy products. We're talking about sugar that's been added by companies and manufacturers to make things just hyper palatably sweet. That's what we're going to avoid. No alcohol and no vegetable oil. And we're gonna talk about why that is very inflammatory in the body and a good thing to avoid. We're gonna focus on protein with each meal. We're gonna focus on vegetables with at least 2 of your 3 or 4 meals throughout the day. We're gonna get lots of water and stay hydrated. So the goal is at least half of your body weight in ounces of water each day as we detox the body. We're going to talk about the importance of fasting. So why it's great to have a 12-hour fast from your last bite to eat at night to your first bite to eat in the morning. And then finally, we're gonna get at least 30 minutes of exercise each day. And this doesn't have to be high intensity interval training or heavy weightlifting. It just has to be movement. So it can even be walking. It can be done in 2 or 3 different intervals. If you don't wanna do it all in one 30-minute clump, you can break that up throughout the day. So that should be very feasible for everybody to accomplish these goals if you put your mind to it and make the commitment. So I want to begin by talking about how our society has changed over the years. If you were to look back at any newspaper or magazine or yearbook from the 1960s, you would see that humans look a lot different than they do today. So back in 1960, only 20% of Americans were overweight or obese. And if you fast forward to today, 60 years later, only about 20% of Americans are at a healthy weight. So we have a rate of overweight or obesity that's almost 80%, which is crazy. So even more staggering is that 12% of Americans are metabolically healthy. Okay, only 12%. And what does that mean, metabolically healthy? Well, metabolic health is just the ability to take in energy, proteins, carbs, and fats, and utilize them effectively in the body. And we don't have that ability any longer. So we have things like high blood sugar, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, prediabetes, diabetes, leading to obesity, heart disease, neurodegenerative disorders, strokes, all of these chronic conditions that are very prevalent in today's society, but that weren't super prevalent 60 years ago. And for you guys to understand why this is happening, I want you to think about this. If you could condense all of human history into 1 year, we only started eating processed and refined vegetable oils and processed and refined sugars yesterday. So for most of human history and human existence, we didn't have these type of products that we are now surrounded by. So those things are really the main cause of why our society is in the unhealthy state that it currently is. So it starts when we're kids. So we are heavily marketed high processed and refined sugary foods with our favorite cartoon characters and superheroes and princesses on them. If you think of fast food restaurants, their mascots are clowns and they have little toys in the meals to get us hooked on that unhealthy food at a very early age. If we think about the school lunch program, this is the one chance in the day that the government has to provide a healthy meal to a public school child. And they are classifying ketchup as a vegetable and chocolate milk as a good source of calcium, when really there's more sugar in that little container than a child should have in the course of the day. So we are really not set up to succeed at a very young age. Back to fast food restaurants. I mean, they were not prevalent 60 years ago like they are today. There's a fast food restaurant on every corner, on every exit from the highway. McDonald's, Burger King, KFC, all of this food. It's convenient, it's cheap, it's tasty, and in our high-paced modern world, it is easy to turn to because we are so busy. But we really need to get back to focusing on meal prep at home. I'm not talking fancy recipes. I'm just talking the basics. Getting some protein, adding some vegetables, having it ready to go so that we don't put ourselves in a position where we have to rely on fast food each night. It's also the portion sizes. So this is an example of a chicken fingers and French fries meal that one person ordered when it could feasibly feed a whole family. But that is the size of our portions here in America. Same thing with this ice cream sundae. This is something one person ordered, but it could feasibly feed a whole table. And with these type of foods, we may have the best interest and say, okay, we're just gonna eat a little, take the rest home, or just leave it on the table. But these types of foods hijack our neuroregulation of appetite. They make it so that we are not full. We don't hear that signal that comes from our fat cells to our brain and says we're good, and we keep eating. Okay, they also elicit hormone responses in our body from adrenaline and cortisol that makes our sugar spike and makes us crave more. So that's why we can overeat these types of foods very easily. So if we avoid them, we're gonna do a really good thing for controlling our portion sizes in general. And it's also the price structure. So if you go to the grocery store, you'll see that a bottle of water is more expensive than a bottle of soda. And the larger bottle of soda is cheaper than the smaller bottle of soda. So if we're just thinking about price, we're gonna go with the larger option and drink more and consume more sugar. Same thing with food products in general. So I was at BJ's and you can see here a little carton of blueberries is $4.29. Well, you go down that same aisle, at the end of the aisle, a large box of jumbo blueberry muffins is $4.49. So for just a few cents more, you get a huge box of blueberry muffins. Same thing with chocolate chip cookies. 2 pounds of chocolate chip cookies for about the same price as a small pack of blueberries. So it really is just backward. And genetically, we are wired to crave sweet things because in our ancestors' days, it was of their best interest to stock up on things like berries and honey when they came across these things because they needed to hold on to fuel for the winter. They had periods of fasting. They didn't know when the next meal was coming. So we are designed to like sugary things. But when we eat these hyper-palatably sweet items, we stop appreciating and enjoying the sweetness in real whole foods. But the opposite is also true. If you guys avoid this type of hyper-palatably sweet foods for 6 weeks, you are gonna start to notice that things like carrots and broccoli and berries are very delicious and sweet. So those things will taste good to you again, and you'll see your taste buds change. So these are the types of foods that we want to avoid on the challenge. They're the very super hyper palatably stimulating, nutrient poor, carbohydrate rich foods that hijack our neuroregulation of appetite. They're very easy to overeat, they're everywhere, they're cheap, and they are composed of 4 major food groups that are subsidized by our government. So the government subsidizes corn. So we think of corn syrup and high fructose corn syrup and corn oil, which is a huge source of polyunsaturated fat and vegetable oil in our diet. Wheat, soybeans, another huge source of polyunsaturated fats, and milk. So these 4 things combined to make every item that we see on this slide, from mac and cheese to a donut to a piece of cake to Doritos, to anything sugary and sweet. So our government pays farmers to produce certain foods in excess, but you don't get a healthy population by selling what you happen to be able to make cheaply. And that's what we're doing. And our current climate of chronic disease is what is the result of this. So we need to avoid these foods in these combinations. And I'm not talking about corn on the cob and milk and dairy products. Like, those things are fine. But when you combine these things and make those processed and refined junk foods, that's what we really want to stay away from. So I want to get into the macronutrients that compose our diet, okay? And we'll learn a little bit of how we should fill our plate based on the 3 macronutrients, and they are proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. So proteins, what are they? They are the building blocks of our muscles and tissues. They're composed of amino acids, and they're essential for building muscle mass. And we should all have the goal of building and maintaining our muscle mass, because it truly is our health pension as we age. It's what's going to allow us to get down on the ground and play with our grandchildren. It's going to allow us to maintain our functional fitness for years and years. So not only do we need to do some resistance training, but we also need to consume adequate protein. And examples of healthy sources of protein: beef, chicken and turkey, whether the white or dark meat, pork, fish, eggs, whether the whole egg or just the egg white. And then protein powders and shakes can be a really convenient option for getting protein in, especially if it's a good quality whey protein that has no added sugar. If you're sensitive to dairy, then a good quality egg or beef protein isolate would be a good option. The other thing that's a really great benefit of protein, especially if you are trying to lose weight, is that it has the highest thermic effect of food. That means that it takes more calories to digest the protein in our system than it does to digest carbohydrates or fats. So 25 to 30% of the protein, or of the energy that we consume in protein, is used to break it down and assimilate it into our bodies. So you're getting the biggest bang for your buck when you eat a high protein diet as you are dieting. The other thing is, I really like animal-based sources of protein. So plant-based sources are not as optimal for 2 reasons. They don't have the bioavailability that animal-based proteins do, meaning that they aren't used as readily in our body. So if you take in 30 grams of protein from a steak, you're going to be able to assimilate and use those 30 grams of protein. Whereas if you take in 30 grams of protein from peas or hemp or rice, you're only going to utilize about 60% of that. So again, for the biggest bang for your buck, animal proteins are the way to go. Also, if you're trying to diet and lose weight, which a lot of people are in the new year, animal-based proteins are definitely going to be the way to go. So this is a great representation. You can see that both of these are 30 grams of protein, but the steak is 180 calories, no carbs. Whereas to get 30 grams of protein from a plant-based source, you'd need 3 cups of beans and rice, which equals 730 calories and come along with 145 grams of carbs. So definitely the animal-based protein is going to be the way to go if we're being conscious of calories and weight loss. And one of the goals of the challenge is to center our plate on protein. So to have protein with every meal, each meal throughout the day. So females, I want you to think about between 3 and 5 ounce portions of protein. You can kind of see there a 4 ounce portion of both chicken breast and flank steak, and that's compared to my palm. So you can kind of see the size that you want to be focusing on. Men are going to need between 5 and 8 ounces of protein at each meal. So here you can see what 6 ounces looks like, both of the chicken and the flank steak. So again, we want to get that benefit from the thermic effect of food. We want to have maintain and gain that lean muscle mass, and that protein is going to be really critical here. So the proteins to avoid during the challenge, well, any type of kind of fast food protein is definitely going to be subpar. Like burger patties, sausage patties are going to have a lot of filler in them. And then chicken, fried chicken, chicken nuggets are going to be fried in a polyunsaturated vegetable oil, which is very toxic in the body. The vegetable oils are not allowed during the challenge. So from a fast food restaurant, really the only thing we could do would be like a grilled chicken breast, or the grilled nuggets would be okay, but we definitely want to avoid the fried protein options. Soy protein we also want to avoid because it is very estrogenic. It can cause some thyroid imbalances, some hormonal imbalances. So it is a subpar form of protein because it is plant-based. So you also want to look at a lot of products that say high protein on them, especially bars and things like that. The Clif Bar is a good option because it looks like it's pretty healthy, it's marketed to the athlete, but when you turn around and read the label, you'll see that that's soy protein based and it has more sugar than a Snickers bar. So it really isn't a good option. We're going to talk about how to read and interpret a nutrition label here in a minute, but we definitely want to avoid the soy proteins, the fried fast foods, and then the burger patties if possible. So the second category of macronutrients is fat. Okay, so fats make up all of our cell membranes, and this is really important because we want our cell membranes to be nice and lucid and flexible. And when we consume vegetable oils, those get incorporated into our cell membranes and make them very rigid, okay? So that's one of the reasons we're gonna avoid vegetable oils throughout the course of the challenge. We want those cell membranes to be very healthy. Fats are essential for proper brain and hormonal function. Fats and cholesterol actually make up our hormones, so they are very important. They slow the rate of gastric emptying, just meaning they keep us feeling full and satiated longer. And they are the most powerful source of fuel for our bodies. So if we think of the analogy of a campfire, the fats are like the log on the fire. So it takes a little while to get them to ignite, but once they start burning, they burn longer, they burn more clean, as long as we are using the good fats and not those vegetable oils. So the fats we want to avoid, and again, this is one of our goals on the challenge, is to avoid vegetable oils. And this is going to be hard, just like it is going to be to avoid the added sugars, because 70% of products in the grocery store have added sugars or vegetable oils. So we're going to have to be a detective looking at those nutrition labels. But what happens is that vegetable oils, even though they seem healthy, right? They have the word vegetable in them, but that's very deceiving. Vegetable oils come from seeds, and to make an oil from a seed, you have to subject it to high heat and a lot of chemicals. And in that processing, that oil is rendered toxic. So when we ingest it in our bodies, it produces these toxic aldehydes, which create inflammation. So remember, chronic inflammation is what is at the cause of all of our chronic diseases, okay? So it comes not only from added sugars in our diet, but also from these processed vegetable oils. So if you go out to eat, it's very hard to avoid because even the nicest restaurants are gonna use them. Again, they're cheap, they're subsidized, they're readily available, so fried food is always gonna be fried in some type of vegetable oil. Salad dressings and mayo, when you're out to eat, is always gonna be based in some type of vegetable oil. And then we always want to avoid margarines of any type. This is a hydrogenated vegetable oil, even more dangerous in the body. So here's a list of what's called the hateful eight. So the worst of the vegetable oils. These are the ones I want you to avoid: canola, corn, cottonseed, soy, sunflower, safflower, grapeseed, and rice bran. So these are the ones you want to look at the back, look at those ingredients labels, and make sure the products you're consuming don't have these, ideally. Now the best fats, what can we have? Because there are lots of good options out there. These are the ones that come from real whole foods. So butter is great, especially a grass-fed brand of butter like Kerrygold, olive oil, avocado oil, and then dressings and mayo that use avocado oil and olive oil as their base. Coconut oil is also another great one. Any of these would be great for cooking with. Avocados are a great source of fat. They are monounsaturated fat. So again, you want to just look at the grocery store. You'll find this Primal Kitchen brand pretty much anywhere now. The Sir Kensington mayo, that you can find almost anywhere as well. So these are what we want to center our fats on in our diet. Now, be cautious, because some of these big brands like Hellmann's and Duke's and Kraft make an olive oil mayo. Okay, but when you look at the ingredients, which I want you guys to get very familiar with, when you turn a product over, the ingredients are listed in order of prevalence in that product. So the most common ingredients will be first, or the most prevalent, and then the fewest will be at the bottom. So when we look at this, the second ingredient is a vegetable oil, soybean oil, even before olive oil. So I hate that they're marketing this as an olive oil salad dressing. This is one we want to avoid, and we know that the Sir Kensington or the Primal Kitchen is 100% olive oil, and that's what we're looking for. Now, if you see, like at the end, some products will say 2% or less of ... that's fine. If there's a little vegetable oil at 2% or less of the product, that's totally fine for the challenge. But if it's one of the top main ingredients, we know that's not a good option. All right, and the third category of macronutrients is carbohydrates. Okay, so carbs include breads, pasta, cereal, grains, and rice. Also candy and soda, the sweet foods, fruits, and vegetables. Okay, so whether it comes from a Pop-Tart or a Gatorade or a donut or a carrot or an apple or a piece of broccoli, it all breaks down to a simple sugar in our body. Now, the difference between a carrot or a piece of broccoli or an apple is that they have some fiber and some micronutrients, some vitamins and minerals that come along with them. So definitely a healthy option, whereas the soda or the Pop-Tart or the jelly beans are just sugar kind of mainlined into our system with no nutritional value. And carbs are the easiest energy source for our body to utilize. So if we go back to the analogy of the campfire, they're like the little twigs and kindling and newspaper. They get that fire burning very quickly, but they also burn out very quickly. So if we think of the standard American breakfast, maybe a bowl of cereal with skim milk, a glass of orange juice, and a banana, all of those things are carbohydrates. So you might feel good as you leave your house, but by the time you get to school or work or the gym, you're gonna have already had a blood sugar high, a spike, and then a crash. So you're gonna be left feeling hungry and tired again, craving more carbohydrates. Whereas if you'd have had a more balanced breakfast with some protein, carbs, and fats, you'd have sustained energy for hours. So something like some eggs, avocado, and fruit, or some eggs and bacon and some, red skin potatoes, something that will keep you energized throughout the day. So what carbs do we want to include on the challenge? Well, one of our goals, along with getting protein at every meal, is to get vegetables at least 2 of our meals a day. And vegetables are a carbohydrate, and they're very important because they not only have fiber, which is great for our digestion, but they also have vitamins and minerals. And they also have a high volume for the amount of calories that they have. So again, if we're trying to diet and lose weight, vegetables are a great thing to have at each meal because they're going to help to fill us up. So the low glycemic index vegetables are the best. Things like broccoli and cauliflower, asparagus, peppers, mushrooms, onions, salad greens. But also on the challenge, we are allowed starches. So potatoes, sweet potatoes, carrots, butternut squash, beets, all of those things are a little higher in natural sugar, just the way fruit is a little higher in natural sugar. So if you're pretty active, fruit and starchier vegetables are going to be a fine option for the challenge. Lots of vitamins and minerals there, lots of good fiber. And then carbs to include if you're active. So again, if you're active, you can get away with a little bit more carbs in your diet. These things, we can have anything from bread as long as there is no added sugar or vegetable oil. So again, we're gonna make sure we look at the label. This is a great brand, Nature's Own, sugar-free, 100% whole grain bread. If you look at something like Wonder Bread, it has 5 grams of added sugar per slice. So that would not be a good option. Same thing with pasta, oatmeal, rice, again, as long as there's no added sugar or vegetable oils. A wrap can be great for making kind of like a sandwich at lunch. Chips, again, as long as they're not fried in vegetable oil. So I like the Siete and Jackson's Honest brand because they use coconut oil, very clean ingredients. And then like our waffles down at the Grind, they are awesome. This is what I have for breakfast every morning. I quickly heat it up in the microwave for a minute and I'm out the door. And these have very simple ingredients, banana, oats, eggs, and our high quality whey protein. So it's a really good combination of some protein and carbs in the morning. Something like a Lara bar or an RX bar is going to be pretty high in sugar, even though it's, from the real food source. It's a date that makes those so sweet, or dried fruit. So that'd be something, again, you kind of want to have in moderation, maybe around your workouts, because there is a lot of sugar, even though it's natural sugar there. So carbs to avoid. Basically, these, again, super hyper palatably stimulating, nutrient poor, carbohydrate rich foods that just send us on that blood sugar roller coaster all day long. So these are the things we want to avoid, these added sugars over the course of the challenge. So what happens when we consume sugar? Well, first it's going to be used to fuel our activity and brain function. So if you are very active, if you are doing CrossFit or EvoFit, or you're a runner, or you're very active in your job, then you can get away with a little bit more sugar and carbs in your diet, because we use those very well for energy for our activity. But if we take in more carbs and sugar than we need for our activity and brain function, it's then going to be stored as glycogen in our muscle and liver. And there's only about 2,000 calories worth of carbs able to be stored in our body. These are the only storage sites we have on our body for carbs and sugar. So anything we take in excess of that is going to be converted to fat. And this is a process called lipogenesis, a process we do very readily. It's taking a glycerol backbone, so a sugar backbone, and pairing it with 3 fatty acids to make what we call a triglyceride. And this is, again, a mechanism that was created in our ancestors years and years and years ago, because they didn't know when the next meal was coming. So they got very good at storing excess sugars and carbs as fat. But fast forward to today, we don't have times of famine. All right, there's a vending machine down every hall and a gas station at every corner. We are surrounded by food in excess, but we are still as good at storing those extra calories as fat. And that's where the problem comes in. So our body works really hard to control our blood sugar. So there's only 1 teaspoon of sugar in our whole blood circulation at any given time. All right, if we have more than that teaspoon coming in through our diet, our pancreas creates insulin. And insulin is a hormone. It's signified by this little blue key here, and it acts as a key to unlock our fat cells and allow the sugar from our bloodstream to go up and be stored as fat. And this is very important, because if sugar is left in our bloodstream, it is very toxic to our blood vessels, to our kidneys, to our brain, if we have too much sugar in our bloodstream. So it's very important that insulin does its job and gets that sugar out of our bloodstream and into our fat cells. But when insulin is chronically elevated, like it is in a standard American diet, when we are constantly consuming carbohydrates and sugars all day long, we start to not be able to tap into our fat stores. Okay, so if you can think of the excess energy on our bodies, whether on our hips or thighs or bellies, like a refrigerator. All right, we should be able to pull from that refrigerator and use that energy in times between meals. We should be able to fast comfortably. We should never get hangry. But when we have chronically high insulin, it's like putting a padlock around that refrigerator and not being able to tap into those energy stores. So we are constantly just hungry for more sugar instead of being able to tap into fat. And studies show that it takes insulin 12 hours to reset. So that's the basis for one of our goals during the challenge, which is a 12-hour fast from the last bite to eat at night to the first bite to eat in the morning. We're going to give our insulin a chance to reset and to be able to better tap in and utilize any stored fat that we have when we need to. So another little, some information about sugar. It acts as a Brillo pad on our smooth arterial walls. So the lining of our blood vessels are nice and smooth in a healthy individual. But when we overconsume processed and refined sugars, the sugar is like a Brillo pad. It makes little lacerations in our arterial walls, which causes plaque and inflammation to build up. So really, sugar is starting the process of atherosclerosis or heart disease. It's at the root cause. So avoiding sugar is really crucial, in excess, of course. So Americans consume an average of 150 pounds of sugar a year. So if you think about those 5-pound bags that you find at the grocery store, that would be like 30 of those for one individual over the course of a year on average. 30 bags. It equates to 22 teaspoons a day, when the recommendation for optimal health is 6 teaspoons or less for women and children and 9 teaspoons or less for men. So we're getting 3 times what we should be per day. And I like the representation of the teaspoon because we can all visualize what a spoonful looks like. But when we look at a nutrition label, it's not that obvious because it's not in teaspoons, it's in grams. And grams are more abstract. So it's important for you guys to remember this. 4 grams of sugar are in 1 teaspoon of sugar. 4 grams per teaspoon. So when we do the math on that, women and children should have 24 grams or less of added sugar a day, and men should have 36 grams or less of added sugar per day. So knowing that guideline, let's look at this product. Can anyone tell me what this is? Well, it's a 20-ounce bottle of Coke. So as you can see, if you look at the carbohydrates, there are 55 grams of carbs, 55 grams of sugar, and all of them are added sugar, okay? So we know that there's no nutrition in this product, it's just empty calories, so we really do wanna avoid sodas on the course of the challenge and year round. So some other food items, now that we know what the goals are, a candy bar has 8 teaspoons of sugar in it. A small Starbucks drink, 11 teaspoons. A cup of orange juice, 6 teaspoons, so your allotment for the day. And some people will say, well, isn't juice healthy? It comes from fruit. Well, and it does come from fruit, but when you juice a fruit, you remove the fiber. So the sugar is then just mainlined into the system just as it would be with a soda. And it takes 3 whole oranges to make a 6-ounce glass of juice. It would be very hard for us to, in one sitting, eat 3 oranges. We'd get filled up with the fiber, but we can easily chug down 6 ounces of juice and still be hungry. So that's why it ends up being just a lot of sugar right into our system, so we want to avoid juice. Yogurt is another really tricky one. A 5-ounce little container, Dannon Light and Fit Greek yogurt, 7 teaspoons. So over the limit for women and children, close to that limit for men. And then a serving of ice cream, 5 teaspoons of sugar, which doesn't seem crazy for how sweet ice cream is, but a serving, as listed on ice cream containers, is a half a cup. Like, who eats only a half a cup of ice cream? It's the size of a small lemon. So most people are at least doubling that. So that would be about 10 teaspoons of added sugar in, most people's serving of ice cream. One final statistic I want you guys to realize, which is just staggering to me, is that an 8-year-old living today has already had the same amount of sugar in their 8 years of life that someone living a century ago would have had in their whole lifetime. So like their grandparent or great grandparent. So this really hits home for me because I have an 8-year-old at home. She's already 8, and we try very hard to moderate the amount of sugar, but it is very hard as a parent. You have to be on top of it because this makes it clear where the biggest problem lies. When we look at our current environment of chronic disease and how it's changed so much since the 1960s, sugar is a main source of the problem. So we really need to avoid that added sugar. And to make it even harder, when you look at a food label, it may not say the word sugar itself. In the ingredients, it could have any of these aliases listed. So for you to think about anything that has the suffix "-ose" is sugar. Anything that has syrup in it or juice concentrate, agave, honey, all these are code words. So just be cautious and look out for those types of sugar. So let's talk about reading a nutrition label. All right, here's an example of a Kind bar, something that seems to be relatively healthy. But when we look at the ingredients, you can see that the second ingredient is cane sugar. It also has brown rice syrup, tapioca syrup, and brown rice syrup again. So 4 different code names for sugar in the ingredients. It also contains canola oil toward the top of the ingredient list, so we know it has an unhealthy vegetable oil in it. When we look under carbohydrates to see if there are any added sugars, we can see that there are 7 added sugars in this product. So that added sugar line is going to be really helpful during the challenge. That will be on all products now. So definitely look at that added sugar line. If there are sugars, it's okay because they could be naturally occurring in the product, but if they are added, that's when we want to avoid it. So this is definitely not a good bar to have. A good option would be something like the Chomps beef jerky sticks. So when we look down at the ingredients, the first ingredient is 100% grass-fed beef, and then everything else is a spice or seasoning. So that's great. We look under sugars, no added sugars. So that's something very portable you can have in your car or your purse or your backpack, and you can find these at any grocery stores now. Marinara sauce or spaghetti sauce is really important. So this is a great brand called Rouse. Again, we look at the ingredients: whole peeled tomatoes, then olive oil, and some seasoning. So no vegetable oils. If we look under the carbs, there are some sugars, so 3 grams of sugar, but 0 added sugar. So we know that that sugar is just naturally occurring in the tomatoes themselves. So that's a great product. Yogurt, again, is very tricky. Here are 2 different examples. We'll start with the Yoplait. If we look at the ingredients, the second ingredient is sugar itself. So when we go up to the carbs, we see that there are 22 grams of sugar and 17 of them are added. So again, not a great yogurt option for our challenge. But something like the Dannon Oikos 000 yogurt is great. All right, we have no sugar in the ingredients. When we go under the carbs, it does have 6 total sugars, but 0 added sugars. So we know those 6 grams are just naturally occurring in the lactose, which is the milk sugar. So that'd be a great product. So what foods can we have on this challenge? Obviously meats, so our proteins: meat, seafood, poultry, and pork. Eggs, whether the egg white or the whole egg. Vegetables, again, all veggies, including the starches: potatoes, winter squash, sweet potatoes, those are great. All fruit, just being mindful of the dried fruit consumption because that is very high in sugar. Salad dressings that are olive oil or avocado oil based and have 0 added sugar in them. Avocado oil based mayo, whether the Primal Kitchen or the Sir Kensington brand, and then coconut, avocado, olive oil, or butter. Those are all great oils to use for cooking, or you can use, like I said, the avocado oil or olive oil for salad dressings. Dairy products are going to be good during the challenge. We can do cheese, cream cheese, cottage cheese, heavy cream, half and half, milk, sour cream, and then yogurt with 0 added sugar. And when I say milk, that doesn't mean chocolate milk, because you will find that chocolate milk has added sugar. So nuts and seeds can be great, nut butters, but be cautious because nut butters, a lot of them, like your Skif or your Jif and your Skippy, will have added sugars, and they will also have added vegetable oil. So you got to look for that canola, soybean oil on the label. Most of the natural ones, like the Smucker's Natural, will just be nuts and sea salt or some type of salt, which is great. Unsweetened almond and coconut milk, if you are not doing dairy milk, those are great options. And then beans, so all legumes, green beans, black beans, lima beans, all of those are going to be great for the challenge. And grains, so this is not a strict paleo challenge. We can do some grains, but the stipulation is you have to make sure they have no vegetable oils or added sugars. So bread, rice, pasta, quinoa, corn and oats are gonna be fine. Again, a little more carb heavy. So if you're trying to lose weight, we wanna moderate those still. And sweeteners. So even though we cannot do added sugar, I want you guys to have a natural sweetener option if you have to have something sweet, say in your coffee, or just to kind of help you get by through the course of the challenge. So I like these sweeteners for 2 reasons. One is that they are natural and not artificial sweeteners. And 2 is that they do not affect our blood sugar or insulin levels. So Truvia and Stevia are great options. You can find those in both the liquid or the granulated forms. Erythritol, which is a sugar alcohol, it's also known as Swerve. So you can find it in the grocery store. It has a granulated, a confectioner's, and a brown sugar version. Monk fruit is a great natural sweetener. Whole Earth is my favorite. It's a blend of stevia and monk fruit. It's in the little packets here. I like that in my coffee just to give it a little sweetness. I think it tastes the most like sugar itself without any aftertaste. And then allulose is a newer sweetener option that you can find pretty much anywhere, but again, it doesn't spike blood sugar or insulin levels. So coffee is going to definitely be a yes food. It can be really important to kind of get you through the energy slump that you might have in the beginning of this kind of detox. So what to put in your coffee? You can obviously put any of those sweeteners that we went over. You could, on top of that, you could add unsweetened almond or coconut milk, heavy cream, half and half, regular milk, or any of these 3 creamers, the Califia Farms brand or the Nut Pods that have 0 added sugar in them. So can definitely still enjoy our coffee. Sauces and dressings. These are important because I don't want you to feel like you have to have just a bland, plain diet. You can definitely make your food taste good. So Primal Kitchen will be your best friend. They have not only the avocado oil-based salad dressings, but they have a no sugar added ketchup. They have a barbecue sauce that is unsweetened. They have different types of mustard, but of course yellow mustard is going to have no added sugar. A salsa that has no added sugar. Your marinara sauce. Frank's Red Hot can be great just to spice things up. Mayo that uses avocado oil, and then olive oil and vinegar. You can always ask for that at restaurants too. Say, can I have olive oil and vinegar on the side for your salad versus the dressing that they will have that is going to be a canola or soybean oil based. So the best drinks, I mean, obviously we want to stick to things that are not sweetened. So the best option would be black coffee, if you can do black coffee or unsweet tea. But if you just can't do those things, of course you could make unsweet tea and then add one of our favorable sweeteners or add one of our favorable sweeteners to your coffee. Water is really your best option. And that's one of our goals as well during these 6 weeks. We want to get half of our body weight in ounces of water each day, okay? And this is, you know, not like a 100% sure method for everyone. We'd really want to take into consideration the climate that you live in, your activity level, your body size, and then we would know how much, you know, to keep you hydrated. But this is just a general recommendation, at least half of your body weight in ounces. And studies show that 75% of Americans are chronically dehydrated. So they're walking around not even realizing that, but it does cause you to be more fatigued, more irritable and moody, not to perform as well in your physical activity that you're doing. So every cell, tissue, and organ in our body requires adequate water to function properly. So we really do need to focus on getting water in throughout the day, definitely trying to front load your day so that you're not consuming all these ounces right before bed at night and then being up all night to use the restroom. It's going to be a really good way to just help us detox. It also helps the heart not to have to work as hard to pump our blood throughout our body if we are properly hydrated. So any type of water will count toward this allotment. It can be sparkling water. It could be like a LaCroix or a Perrier. It could be this hint water that just has a hint of flavoring in it. It could be electrolytes. So my next slide shows like the LMNT or Ultima are both great sources of electrolyte. It comes in a powder that you just add to your water. It's going to give you some sodium, potassium, and magnesium. If you are sweating a lot, if you're working out, if you're, you know, if you have a job that's outside in the summertime, these are really good, and those can count toward your water intake as well. Now, some sweet options if you do need something. Bywater is sweetened with erythritol, which is another one of our safe sweeteners, and Zevia is sweetened with stevia. So that's like a soda if you're having a hard time coming off of like Coke or that kind of thing. A Zevia can be a good thing in the interim. But these things can also make you crave more sweet because they are still sweet. So if you find that's the issue, you might want to avoid them as well. All right, artificial sweeteners we definitely want to avoid. So something like a Gatorade Zero is going to have a sulfame potassium, which is a nasty chemical sweetener. Something like sparkling ice is sweetened with sucralose, which is again a chemical sweetener. And then diet sodas of pretty much every variety are going to be sweetened with aspartame, another chemical. So if we can avoid these in favor of like the Zevias or Bywaters, that's going to be a better option. So another one of our rules for the challenge is no alcohol. And I know that's going to be the hardest part for a lot of people, but it's going to be very beneficial because alcohol is a toxin in our bodies. It has what's called the first oxidative priority. So our body metabolizes through substances in order of their toxicity to our system. So as we're going along through the day, our body's metabolizing fat for energy, we're burning our calories. As we take in alcohol, it has to stop all fat burning and metabolize through that alcohol. So the liver has to work really hard to get that out of our system. So it is a toxin in our body. Not only that, but it's high in calories. So even if you choose a variety that has no carbs and no sugar, and you use a no carb, no sugar mixer, alcohol has a lot of calories itself. So it has 7 calories per gram of alcohol, and sugar has 4 calories per gram. So almost double the amount of calories that sugar itself has. So it impairs our fat loss. It also has a large insulin response, just the way sugar does in our system. It turns off growth hormone release, inhibits testosterone production, and decreases our physical performance by 40%. So anyone who's interested in performing well in the gym or in a sport or an athletic endeavor is not going to be drinking alcohol because it has such a negative effect on the body. You guys are going to feel better. You're going to make better food choices because it does impair our food judgment. Like we've all been there. After you have a few beers or a few glasses of wine, you know, those cheese fries or those fried wings look a lot more tempting, and it impairs our ability to make good judgment when it comes to foods. So another rule during the challenge is to maintain a 12-hour feeding window. So 12 hours, of course we're going to use our bedtime hours in that. So if we're getting our 8 hours of sleep, which we all should be, we're only talking 4 additional hours of not eating. And really only 10% of Americans do this. 90% of Americans are eating most of the day and night, which is crazy. So eating consistently in a 12-hour window can prevent and reverse chronic disease and increase longevity, so increase our lifespan, just by cutting our feeding window. Nighttime eating is well associated with an increased risk of diabetes and obesity, and our metabolism is well adapted to daytime feeding and nighttime fasting. So this comes down to our circadian rhythm. This is like our biological clock, where we can process foods better during the daytime hours than we can at night. So we have a bigger insulin response to the same foods at night than we do earlier on in the day. So by doing this and making this one of our rules, I'm hoping that it will help you guys avoid any nighttime snacking. So a lot of times you eat dinner, a few hours later, you're like, man, I could go for something, and it's usually something not very healthy. It's, something from the pantry that's high carb, salty, crunchy, or sweet, and it's not really anything that we need. So by closing that window, we just know that after dinner, there's no snacking, we're gonna brush our teeth, go to bed a little earlier, hopefully, and when we wake up, you can have breakfast after you've completed those 12 hours. So say you finish dinner at 6 p.m., you even have time for a snack, maybe around 7, but then after 7, we're not gonna consume any calories until 7 a.m. Okay, so that would be even like creamer in our coffee. You could have black coffee before that and still be in your fasting window, but nothing that has calories in it. So I think this will be good. This will be something I want you guys to really focus. You know, when you take your last bite at night, you can even write that down. You can get an app that will help you track that, but see how you feel. I think you're gonna sleep better. Your body doesn't have to divert energy to digestion. You know, we should all stop eating about 2 hours before going to bed anyway. So this is gonna help with that. And then finally, we want 30 minutes of exercise a day. So this, again, it doesn't have to be strenuous. It doesn't have to be CrossFit or EvoFit. Those are my favorites, but it could be walking. It could be jogging. It could be yoga. Anything where you're getting your heart rate up and moving is gonna be important. So 7 days a week, 30 minutes. So let's just go through a sample day of what you could eat during the challenge. So we talked about coffee and some of the options of creamers and sweeteners to put in it. You could do eggs and bacon and some fruit and avocado in the morning. You could do an egg scramble with a side of red skin potatoes. Those would be great options. We could also do oatmeal. Again, it's a little more carb heavy, but for active individuals, it can be great. So a half a cup of oats, you're gonna mix in there some protein. So I like to always put some protein with the carbs. That's gonna blunt the insulin and blood sugar response. So a scoop of a good quality whey protein. A big scoop of that mixed in with a half a cup of milk of your choice. It could be regular milk, coconut milk, unsweetened coconut milk, of course, and unsweetened almond milk. And then mix the protein in with it and pour that into your oatmeal. The protein powder is sweetened with stevia, so it gives it a little sweetness. You don't have to add maple syrup or honey or anything to it. Another breakfast option could be a yogurt parfait. So taking any of these favorable yogurts, okay, the Too Good brand, the Ratio protein yogurt, the Dannon 000, or if you're sensitive to dairy, you could do the So Delicious unsweetened vanilla yogurt. Mixing that with, again, a scoop of your protein powder and some nuts and berries, that could be a great, easy, convenient breakfast. Some grab and go options, because I really do think it's important that we get a good meal in the morning. The grind, if you're here working out, our cafe downstairs, any of our grinds are challenge compliant. So none of them have added sugar, none have vegetable oils. I would do a 24 ounce, the large if you're making it a meal replacement, and the 16 ounce or the small if you're having it as a snack. Hard-boiled eggs, something you can make in bulk and grab. Something like the Vital Farms pasture-raised egg bites. You can find at a lot of grocery stores now. You can quickly heat those up in the microwave. They have no vegetable oils or added sugar. I mentioned our protein waffles, again from the grind. Those are a great breakfast. And Lakanto even makes a monk fruit maple syrup now, so no added sugar. That's great if you do want something sweet on your waffle. Snack ideas. Again, you could do hard-boiled eggs, fruit, protein shakes, tuna packets or pouches. They're very convenient and portable. The Jackson's Honest potato chips, a nut butter, and an apple. RX bars are a great, convenient, portable option as well. Pork rinds, I really like the Epic brand of baked pork rinds because they're high in protein, low in carbs and fats. The Chomps beef jerky sticks, veggies, deli meat roll-ups, cheese sticks. Again, your proteins that have no your yogurts that have no added sugar. You could use these Holy Guacamole packets to dip veggies or deli meat roll-ups. You could do nuts, a little Baby Bell cheeses, or Quest bar is even one bar that's compliant for the challenge. It uses whey protein and has no added sugar. Potential lunch options, you could definitely do a sandwich or a wrap. Again, making sure your bread or wrap has no vegetable oil. Something like Jimmy John's, their unwich or their sub, just making sure you're not using their mayo, maybe just their mustard. You know, you could make your own little deli meat roll-ups with cheese in them. You could do a salad, any type of salad. You could do little romaine lettuce wraps. Pair that with a piece of fruit and some Jackson's Honest chips, and that would be a great lunch. Oops. So dinner options, really any protein source with a vegetable and or starch. So it could be a lettuce wrapped burger patty. It could be rice and chicken, green beans, shrimp, salmon, a salad, baked sweet potato or white potato on the side. You could do spaghetti with that Rouse marinara sauce and some ground beef, or you could do zucchini noodles, cauliflower rice. They're all great options. Now, if you're in a bind and you're like, man, I don't want to prepare all of this on my own, we have a great option this year. It's called At Home 704. And this is a company one of our members created, Aaron, that he is going to be making healthy meals that are challenge compliant that we can order online and have delivered here to Vitality. So if you know you're not one to prep, this is a great option. You just have to place your order by Saturday of each week, and it will be delivered Tuesday to our Vitality fridge downstairs at the Grind. Now, all of his salad dressings are olive oil or avocado oil based, so no vegetable oils used. He uses no added sugar. These are some examples of salads, a lunch wrap, and then his little lunchbox meal, he calls it. It's basically some chicken, turkey bacon, hard-boiled egg, and some nuts, and he has a great sauce to dip the chicken in. So this is a really convenient option. You can go to his website, which is basically his Facebook page. It's At Home 704 to see the menu each week, and you can place your order through that Facebook page or at aaron@home704@gmail.com. Again, get those orders to him by Saturday and he will have it here ready for you on Tuesday. We're also going to be having some grab and go salads in the cooler downstairs. If you just want to come in and grab something after your workout, that will be an option as well. So we're really excited to have him on board. But food prep is really going to be your best option, guys. If you can take some time every week to grocery shop and make some foods in bulk. It can either be the full meal or even just the proteins, because we know the proteins are the hardest part. If you can get those out of the way, they're easy to reheat every night. You can throw a bag of mixed greens and make a salad, or you could put a bag of like steam in the bag veggies, like these riced veggies or the zucchini noodles that are steam in the bag. It's easy to pop those in the microwave, but the proteins are what take a while. So I would definitely recommend picking a day, and you can prepare them any way you'd like. You could use a grill outside, you could use an Instant Pot, a crock pot, an air fryer. You could do it in the oven, cover a sheet pan with all the chicken breasts and thighs that you can fit on there and bake it in the oven. Or you could fry them in coconut oil or butter or olive oil on the stove. But whatever way you can get those meats prepped, put them in little containers and have them ready to go each night. If you do want to make your veggies and starches as well and pre-portion them, that's awesome. But again, those don't take as long even if you want to do that each day. But putting that time into food prep is going to pay off a ton to set you up for success throughout the week. So I just want to leave you guys with the notion that it won't be easy, but it will be worth it. Following these stipulations and these goals, you are going to have more energy, you're gonna sleep better, you're gonna perform better in the gym, you are gonna lose weight if fat loss is your goal. You could even gain muscle as long as you're eating enough of the healthy foods and doing some resistance training. You are gonna just feel better in general, not have the cravings that you do now at the start of the challenge and after the holiday season, and you are just gonna feel better. But in the beginning, there will be some fatigue, you will be tired, you will have the cravings, you will be a little bit more moody, and you could potentially even get some headaches. And this is because sugar is a drug. This is a picture of a PET scan of a brain, and you can see those same centers in the brain light up in response to cocaine as they do to sugar. So it is addictive, and we are addicted to it as a society. So when we cut it out, we really do experience some of these it's almost like withdrawal symptoms, okay? But you just have to realize it's not gonna last forever. Research shows that after 3 days of cutting out sugar, 50% of people no longer have cravings. And after 6 days of cutting out sugar, 90% of people don't have cravings. So after the first week, you're pretty much guaranteed that you will be feeling better. You won't miss those foods that are not good for you anyway. To help you through this process, make sure you have compliant snacks on hand and with you all the time. So things like nuts, beef jerky, deli meat, hard-boiled eggs, fruit, cheese sticks, all of these things are very convenient, pretty portable, and they can prevent you from making a poor decision because you're too hungry and you're passing that fast food restaurant. And then remedies, if you do feel these kind of sugar flu symptoms in the beginning, getting some electrolytes, whether it's the LMNT or the Ultima that I showed earlier, that will help replenish your sodium, potassium, and magnesium levels. Have a cup of coffee, even if it's in the afternoon. If you're having that slump, definitely that'll give you a pick-me-up, and definitely make sure you're getting the water in. That is gonna keep you, detoxing through this process, keep you well hydrated, and just keep you going. So yeah, use these strategies, guys, and just realize it's not gonna be hard for long. You're gonna have a group of people doing it together, supporting you through, and you're gonna feel so much better.